Welcome to Merill Talks in 2025, where we discover everything from global economics to the stock market. Happy New Year and successes. Thank you to our audience for their constant support. We thank you very much and we very much appreciate it. Do not hesitate to also visit our LinkedIn page and our website merillfunds.com. Today, Marc, as usual, will be with us to decrypt the current macroeconomic landscape. Today's focus is Spain, a country with a rich history and dynamic economy that has shaped its position in Europe and beyond. From its financial institutions like Banco Santander and BBVA, to its leadership in renewable energy and the global fashion industry with brands like Zara and Mango, Spain offers valuable lessons and opportunities for investors. Welcome, Marc, and even if this is your first time with us, Marc has managed money for over 2 decades from Geneva to London and now from Malta. So, before we start our journey, please keep in mind we do not provide recommendations, do your own research, and as usual, the disclaimer will be at the end of the video. Let's get started. So, Marc, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone and a lot of success. We hope this year the macro landscape will be quite easy to read, which I doubt, as 2024 was quite straightforward in a certain way, especially on the central bank, I would say.
Great, Marc. And in fact, speaking of central banks, how about we start with that discussion? What's up with central banks?
Yes, I think now we are starting a new year. It's time to reflect a little bit and let maybe put on the screen here where we stand on the rate side. A lot of discussions. As we know, the central bank, the ECB, the Fed have been acting, some aggressively, some not. I will say the most aggressive one was the Central Bank of Switzerland, surprising at the end of the year to cut on 50 basis points, knowing that the Swiss franc is still very strong. That's an anomaly. And on the other side, if you see now on the screen the cycles, one of our favorite central bank, as you know, which is the Central Bank of Norway, when the rate are staying steady and no cut here. Interestingly, compared to the rest of the world who's going, I will say, on a easing cycling. As we know, there is the outsiders, Japan, and obviously Australia here.
So, Marc, in November, you also wrote an article about France. Where do we stand about that?
I mean, as you know, the situation is quite difficult for the President Macron. Barnier is not anymore the Prime Minister, so there is a new Prime Minister. He will survive winter. That's a big question here. France is really in a difficult and a complex situations. Obviously, the far right is making trouble, but of course the left also has been making troubles. So now he's trying to concentrate with the center, but we will see. So clearly here France is really in a deep troubles in the politics side. Germany is not even better, but here let's come back to the South Zone and to Spain. So as you know, I wrote this article, but I think it's good to put Spain now in a perspective of the South Zone. So have a look now on the screen of the PMI, which is an indicator of the activity in Europe. And I will say we put in perspective Italy here, Spain and France. And clearly we can see Spain is an outlier. I mean, we are above 50 and really above 50 when Italy approaching the 50 and France like clearly going in the zone of below 50. So is in compression, so that's the risk. So clearly here, Spain is an outlier. Now let's go quickly. I just want to show you the chart that we noticed last time, the debt to GDP. And as we can see on the debt to GDP, and it was a discussion of the article because the rate of France now is higher than Spain. Of course, the rating has been downgraded. France has been downgraded, not a surprise. We are above 100, and just to remind you that normally Europe recommend between 60 and 80. As we know, Germany is more like above 60. So it should be below 100 and below 80. That's the case, which is not the case of Spain, it's not the case of France. And far away, as we know, always the problem we know on the market, it's like Italy here. So clearly here on these two parameters, which is PMI and debt to GDP, I will say PMI, no doubt, Spain is outpace its competitors, or I would say its peers here in Europe. And on the debt side, in the same, I would say, same class as France here.
Mark, back in 2022, you put US very much at the top in comparison to the peers that we're comparing here. Would you like to continue on this?
Yes, I mean, definitely, and especially in 2025, US is the place to be. And a lot of people know that. So it's not need to be a lot of fund manager at the moment, like they are positioning themselves really heavily in US, which could be an overcrowded bet for sure when Europe is really not in favor at the moment. But my point here, it's like maybe US is the star of the moment. There is no doubt about this. But when you see, and I think it's also interesting to see now on the chart, and just want to show you it here. In 2023, Spain was not so far from US actually on this growth of 3%. And now we are not yet have the final figures here about 2024, but it could be, Spain could be above US. And this is very interesting. Like when I wrote this article in 2022, the last domino to fall, Spain was already doing well, and as we know, and doing well on the several aspects. For us, it's quite clear, and we think the economy is like, okay, when you think about Spain, you think about tourism industry, it's booming, etc. Yes, tourism is booming clearly, but it's beyond that, and that's why Spain is an interesting country. Why? Because it's very well diversified and well balanced. And like you said, Mark, at the beginning of these discussions, we got two big banks, Santander and BBVA, with a big footprint in South America, which is interesting. As we know, South America is doing quite well. So it's also bringing a lot of positive catalysts here on that side. So I would say the banks are playing a major role, especially in the South Zone, as we know. Because the capitalistic approach is not so advanced compared to the Scandinavian countries. So that's an aspect of the things. And of course, another factors here, it's also not only the banks, but it's going beyond that, and I spoke about this several times. It's the infrastructures, but also the bet they made back 2007 on the infrastructure side. Like I say, I know quite well about this because I was a fund manager of a clean tech energy. And I would say at that time, Spain was like just building up really crazily on the infrastructure side. And also at that time, also I always compared to Germany, who has a lot of companies doing like solar panel, who now they don't exist anymore. I mean, the Chinese took over. When Spain is still persistent and still doing very well. So clearly here we have an economy built on a solid root, that's for sure, and it will continue. And it's going even beyond that. So, like I say, we have the banks, we have also the renewables, but we have also the textile industry, and everyone knows Zara, everyone knows Desigual or Mango, because the guys had some accident in the mountain. So clearly here you have a lot of positive catalyst, and probably it's a large economy in Spain. It's not like we're talking about a small economy, and a consistent way of doing the things. I know there is a lot of issue on the political side. They try to manage in a way like in a consensus way that the French cannot make it at the moment. So that's another. The socialist government is trying to manage the way on that side. So clearly here, like catalysts are positive and they are here to stay. And I would say cherry on the cake here is probably in the tourism industry, who's booming like in a crazy way. Of course, we need to speak about immigration from South America, who contribute also as young immigrations, making like really pushing the GDP in the right directions. As we know, in Europe, we are facing a problem of aging populations. Germany and also the one who's really in a big trouble, it's clearly Italy. As we know, for example, in Japan, was facing this major issue of too many old people and aging populations, lot of empty houses. It's also similar in Italy. So clearly here Spain has I will say, in the demographic side, young populations coming from the immigration from the South America, which is obviously pushing the things in the right directions. When, for example, Italy has problem on that side, and of course we know that Germany is facing also a lot of issue putting control at the border against on that side.
So Marc, a lot of economies have struggled to reach or even outperform their former selves before the pandemic. Can we talk about Spain in this regard?
Yes, Spain, it's an outlier here. Clearly, I mean, like you say, a lot of economy, especially in Europe, have been struggling to back on the foot, I will say, at the same level that it used to be, when Spain is even outperforming that and going above this level of performance. And I think it's a very strong sign here. If a country is back on that side, I think we have the same story also with US. After the post-pandemic, the situation is quite good on the growth side. And I think Spain is here showing a lot of resilience. It's a structural trend, clearly here. And that's why. Now, of course, there is a lot of discussions of immigrations, which is, at the moment, I will say, it's a major issue here in Europe. I mean, as we know, the far right in France has been blocking the things. People, like I said last time, Jordan Bardella is very popular at the moment, and Macron is facing 2027 the presidential elections. So immigration, it's really an issue. But Spain, I think, in a smart way, integrate a lot of migrants, especially from South America. So they are speaking the same language, so they are going in the same directions. So, I mean, wait and see. But so far, it's doing, the economy is doing well, going on that side. I went recently in Portugal, and I was very surprised the number of Spanish tourists. I mean, it's a very good sign if your neighbor is coming to visit you as a tourist. It's a very positive sign here. So again, here in a conclusion, yes, economy in a good shape on the post-pandemic side. It's a positive thing when majority of Europe it's still struggling, and tourism industry it's a problem. And I think, for example, it's an issue for France, who a lot of people are tired about strike and etc. And they say, okay, should I go to France to visit? Yes or no? That's the questions, and probably they prefer and they opt for Italy or for Spain.
So, Marc, here at Merill, we're always concerned about risk.
Correct.
You painted Spain to be quite a nice image, but what is the downside?
I mean, obviously, the coalitions, it's an issue. The political side, like we see in France, so far they manage this, but we know also what's the consequence of a coalition here. If you think about Germany, and during Merkel and all his reign, no reforms. I mean, one of the major issues here we are facing in Europe is the reforms. I mean, Draghi came about this, innovations. We made a video last year, so in 2023 about it. Spain is facing the same problem like the rest of Europe, like reforms, especially with a coalition. Is it possible to push the reform? That's a big question. I think now the other part and the other weakness of the economy could be the real estate market. I mean, as we know, real estate market went also not to the moon, but Spain is going up and up and up on the real estate side. And we know not long time ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, had a massive boom and bust, and has major issue to survive these things, which was a positive thing, I will say, because they started again, they restart the economy. They suffer a lot during this problem on the real estate side. Now it could be back again. So we have two ingredients we need to monitor very closely. How Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister, will continue to manage his coalitions and how he will pass reforms going forward, especially in this year in 2025. Second one is the trajectory of the real estate market. And the third one, I will say, how the immigrations will continue on the positive side in Spain when the rest of Europe have been very anxious about what's going on in the immigrations and how to treat the immigrations. So clearly here we have challenge for Spain, but also for Europe. But I think even with this weakness, Spain is still in a better shape than the rest of Europe to face these major issues.
So, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you to Marc as well. We look forward to having you for the rest of 2025 and even beyond. Should be a very interesting year. I remind you again to even follow us on LinkedIn. We try to keep you as updated as possible there. Every week Marc has his commentary apart from the other things that we post. And also our website merillfunds.com to learn more about us. The disclaimer will be popping up now, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.